Welcome to This Academic Life, Episode 71. We'd like to thank our sponsor, the School of Engineering at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, for sponsoring this episode.
This episode is sponsored by the School of Engineering at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Did you know that RPI engineering professor Pankaj Karandi and his group recently used a 3D printer to print human skin, which could potentially be used for burn victims? Not only that, they reported being able to grow hair follicle cells in the printed skin for the very first time. Now that's what we call solving a big, hairy problem.
Hi, I am Kim Michelle Lewis, Professor of Physics and Associate Dean for Research.
Hi, I'm Pania Newell. I'm a Professor of Mechanical Engineering.
Hi, my name is Lucy Zhang. I'm also a Professor of Mechanical Engineering. Welcome, everyone. We're going to continue our conversation about being parents. So in today's episode, we'd like to talk about parental leave policy and its unintended consequences. Many of us who's been in the academic world long enough probably know that since about 20 years ago, parental leave has been normalized and celebrated greatly in the workplace. In many states, and especially at universities, the parental leave typically means that, number one, you can get a paid leave for one semester. And that's a whole semester, not just a few 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And number two, if you're on a tenure track, but not tenured yet, you can get an extension on your tenure clock automatically. And this is regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. I know that when I had my first child, maternal leave was implemented, and RPI was one of the very few universities at the time who gave such generous paid leave. And very soon after, perhaps in the following year or two, the fathers were given the same benefit. At this point, everything looks great on paper. However, there had been some unintended consequences most of us probably already know about, but don't say. Until there's a paper that came out in 2016, about 20 years after the first implementation of parental leave, a trail of economics professors did a study focusing on the top 49 economics department in the country to examine the impact of clock stopping policies that are available and open to both male and female professors who became parents. The data is collected from 1,299 assistant professors hired from 1985 to 2004. The finding is shocking, quote unquote, shocking, emphasized shocking. When comparing candidates for tenure, the success rate for male candidates increased by 19.4 percentage point after stopping the clock was offered. For women, the rate fell by 22.4 percentage points. I have always known this is the case because not a single male professor I know actually use the stop the clock to really do childcare. All of them use the extra time to produce more publications and write more grants to make their CV better and fuller. While in the meantime, the female faculty really had to use that time to recover from postpartum physical and mental stress and take care of the children. In fact, a semester leave is not nearly enough for the women. But seeing this number is quite validating to my belief. What are your observations? Do you know anybody that's either male or female who had sort of take advantage of the policy?
Well, I know a lot of men. Some of them actually, their baby was dropped in at daycare and they were at home writing proposals, writing papers, and enjoying their parental leave. Not even the baby was not even in the home. But I do know maybe one case that the male colleague was the primary person taking care of that infant while the wife had to go back to work, and they didn't have any daycare or any nannies or anybody else to help. And that person was very much in charge of the baby, and they really, really needed that parental leave. But most of the cases that I know, and most of my male colleagues, they very openly talk about it, and they say that they use the opportunity to advance their career.
Soon after this article was published, there was a website that started collecting comments. It was really, really interesting. We're going to put the link in the show notes. One person said, "Yep, I'm an assistant professor, and I will never forget being cornered in the hallway by another assistant professor, a man, who told me excitedly that I should really consider having a baby soon because it would stop my clock. And when his wife had a baby, he wrote a book while on paternity leave. I could write a book too on maternity leave." Leaving aside the extreme sociopathy that is having a child to stop your tenure clock, maternity leave and paternity leave are not the same thing at all. So this is a comment from a woman professor who's just been traumatized by the male colleague giving that comment. And then another male faculty left a comment and said, "Also, speaking as a man who left the workforce for 4 months to care for an infant, why would you create a policy intended to address the gender gap that having kids exacerbates and then apply it equally to both male and female faculty? You're economists at prestigious research institutions, for Christ's sake. Did no one sit down with a pencil and try to sketch this out?" This is my thinking also. Someone also said it's probably due to legal issues. They want to, at least on the human resource side, they probably want to apply the same policy equally to women and men, at least on the surface. Otherwise, it would seem unfair for real caregivers of male colleagues.
I think I've also heard the case or read or spoke to a colleague that you can also get this leave if you're adopting kids. And I also wondered if that's the same thing as having a baby. I could definitely see how adjustment is needed in both cases. But if I heard correctly, I think you can, if that is considered a life-changing event. And so you could also request leave for that as well.
That's true. That is true. I've heard that as well. And in fact, I know someone who had to travel, like both parents, they have to travel, which of course they have to take time off from teaching and, from academic regular semester. So they had to travel to do the adoption process, which took a very long time. They had to stay there for a certain amount of time. This is my personal opinion. I think the intention is good, providing opportunities for both women and men who would like to take this opportunity to take care of their child. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's only fair to do that. My problem is that in reality, men use this opportunity and they take advantage of it to use this time to advance their career. I know someone who just said, "Well, I don't have enough, so I'm just going to use this entire year to just build out my CV." That's really, straight, right? I mean, this is his plan. And when that year ended, he still didn't have enough. And he said, "Well, maybe I'll just have my wife to have another child." And this is real, right? I mean, they know such thing exists. They simply taking advantage of it. Actually, I didn't know about this. Someone also left a comment. This person works for a company. They said when the company implement this parental leave policy equally for men and women, they had the man pledge the amount of weeks that they actually take off to solely take care of their infants. Like they have to pledge, do a signature to verify it, or at least on the surface. So this opinion actually got applauded by a number of faculty who left comments on this website, who said, oh, we should do exactly the same thing and have all the male professors actually sign something, like a pledge that they verify that they did take care of the children.
Or send daily photos of them and babies. But yeah, I really think that there should be some adjustment to these policies, and academia is full of smart people, so they are going to figure out ways around it for their own benefit. And then it goes back all to, I guess, to the pressure of the tenure that makes people act in an unethical manner. That was obviously was not the intention of these policies that they put in place.
What I was mostly annoyed about is that it took years, decades, or maybe more than a century to implement something like this for women. And it only took a couple of years for the paternal leave to be implemented. The policymakers are in our fields are all, like in STEM fields, are all men. They very quickly catch up. Like, it bothers me so much. I'm like, this is the problem. This is why we need more women in the leadership position, in the decision-making roles. So these type of inequality or extreme, I don't know, I would call it like, creating more disparity type of policies, maybe it'll be made more equal. I don't know, more fair to both sides.
I think that what we are missing is the just part of it. Creating equal opportunity does not necessarily make it just for the people involved. And that's what all these policies, they are afraid of getting sued or whatever. So they say, well, let's apply to everybody. But then is it really fair and just to both parties? And that's the question that I guess it never crossed their minds. And the policymakers, they don't care about.
Anything that we can do, I feel this is so unfair. Like, I've heard so many, I mean, the data, of course, also shows it creates even bigger gap between men and women as when they receive this tenure clock, extra tenure clock. So what can we do about, like, what can we do? This cannot keep going. This is just wrong.
I know what we can do. The universities, they should not allow submissions of the proposals, and they should not count the papers during those periods. They exclude all of those. That's what they can do. That's what we can do. We are not voting on if you are taking parental leave, how come you are taking care of the baby and writing 20 proposals?
That's a gangster move. It is, because I'm sitting here as an administrator and I'm thinking with my administrator hat on, and I'm trying to think of a reason why that's bad. So just plain devil's advocate.
That's not bad. That is just the right way to do it.
No. Hear me out. The reason, so my devil's advocate is, okay, you will have to give some leeway. So let's just say I am pregnant. My baby is due in March. I go out on maternity leave. During that time, a paper from my research group comes out. It doesn't necessarily mean that I was working during my maternity leave. It could very well mean that paper was in the pipeline and submitted prior to, no, if I can,
no, don't argue with me, Kim. No. There are papers, the date, submission, revision. If the work was done during your
But
maternity leave and
no,
the
so
proposals.
I'm sorry if I'm pregnant and I deliver my baby and I have a paper that's on the cusp of coming out and my child is on a routine because I have a spreadsheet and I know that baby is going to bed. I know it's not perfect. My spreadsheet is not perfect, but I know approximately that that child is going to be asleep at 8:16 p.m. And I'm going to use from 8:17 p.m. until 11:59 p.m. to try to wrap up this paper and get it submitted because that's a dangling chat. And now I come back online, I'm back at work, submit my tenure application, and you tell me that you're not going to count that paper because it was submitted while I was on maternity leave. I'm coming to fight you.
No, I'm saying if it's one paper, I'll accept it. If it's 20 paper, then it means there is something wrong with you or your baby.
Okay. 20 papers is a lot. I'm not sure somebody can, really, but let's be reasonable. Let's say
that's what men are doing. That's what our male colleagues are doing. They are publishing
but you show
left
me,
and right.
Okay. I'm saying within reason. If it's 1 or 2 papers, that clearly
up to 3. We can make a policy. That's our contribution. Lucy asked what we can do to change.
And I'm saying I think people will be fighting because I know that when I went to Lucy's house after her kids were born, and I was sitting in her kitchen or her sunroom, and them kids will be crying. Lucy like, I don't hear nothing. And we will keep working. I'm like, Lucy, that baby crying. Brad's upstairs. I don't hear nothing. So I'm just saying it's possible. I'm just saying it's possible. I'm not saying
not 5 nature paper coming out during the leave.
I'm not saying that Lucy could have done 20 papers during that time. It's possible that you could do 1 or 2, but not 20. But if your male colleagues are excessively abusing the policy on a clear maternity leave and they have 20 some papers, yes. Do I think it's questionable? Yeah, absolutely. But if it's 1 or 2 and I look at it, I'm probably not going to question it. But if it's a high productivity, and I would probably make a comment to the approving committee. I would probably say something. I think it's very sticky, but I do think but I don't know if you could actually implement that without it going into some bylaws or into the faculty handbook. Like it would literally have to be written in stone and the criteria would have to be clear. Right. And then I don't even know if it would be fair to put a number on it. But maybe I like your idea of submission dates. And I think it will be up to the committee to determine what's obsessive, what is too many, seriously, but it's an interesting concept. It's a very interesting concept.
When I was in national labs, when you take a leave, you are out. You are not doing work. You are not having access to the system or anything. So when you are on parental leave, you should not be able to allow to submit proposals. That's paper. I was joking, but 3 papers, yeah, sure, because papers, they take time to come, but you should not be able to use that opportunity to advance your career.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I think that, I think
that's your point.
Yeah, and I think that it's an easy implementation because many women, if you ask them, honestly, I've never heard any of my female colleague being excited. Oh, I'm pregnant. I'm gonna take the maternity leave and I'm gonna write 20 proposals. All they are worried about is their baby and taking care of the baby. And so I think that this would make it, I guess, a fair.
Yeah, I agree because it's similar to when you're on family leave. you shut down. Nobody can call you, nobody can talk to you. You're gone. So I can see that. I like that concept of you on maternity leave, your access is shut off, air quotes, but I can see why it could affect the matriculation of grad students in the program. You still need some minimum access to your students to guide them, but you could always get around that. And I can say, well, Lucy's in a very close field. Lucy, can you take on my graduate students? Just check, here's the things I need them to do while you're gone, or something like that. So I can see it would definitely take a lot of planning, but Panya, I was poking fun at you, but I really do think it makes sense that if it's, as Lucy made a quote earlier, that if you carefully sketch this out on paper with pencil, it could work. It could very well work. And I think when you reviewing applications, people make their own subconscious judgment anyway, whether you was on maternity leave and you had 0 publications, or whether you was on, some form of parental leave and you had 20 publications. I think subconsciously they think about it one way or another, and it could play out in the vote, whether they know it or not.
I like that at least if we can't control papers, but at least proposals we can. I like that, actually. And I haven't seen any universities actually implement any refinement of these policies or parental policies yet. Perhaps there hasn't been a lot of discussions about those. I know that there had been more papers after that initial paper from 2016 that we've been talking about to do these type of survey. And it's very convincing, but there hasn't been any actions. And we're here to call for actions. Let's hope something can happen in the near future, just so that we can have a more even field for male and female in academic world. It's probably hard, but at least we can try. Well, thank you for all your thoughts on this. I think we have a plan or call for action. And let's hope that this conversation keeps on going. And so if you are someone who had experienced or heard stories like this, share with us as well. And we would like to just open up this conversation. So hopefully something can be done in the near future.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. You can follow us on Facebook and listen to our latest episodes on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Music. We'd like to thank our sponsor, the School of Engineering at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, for sponsoring this episode. If you're interested in being a sponsor, then please contact us at sponsor@thisacademiclife.org. Join us next time for the good, the bad, and the ugly of this academic life.